Welcome back to the show. What's going on, everybody? This is Seahawks Now, brought to you right from Seahawks Ave, and of course brought to you by Fan Arch. Today, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers and Geno Smith and who is the better fit for the Seahawks. We're going to start with the breaking news about Aaron Rodgers, but first, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss another breaking news alert about the Seattle Seahawks. All right, guys, now let's get into the video. Aaron Rodgers, it's been reporting, will be available as a free agent this offseason. The New York Jets are moving on from the four-time MVP, from the future Hall of Famer, from the Super Bowl champion, Aaron Rodgers. This is huge, right? I mean, this really is huge. For him, it's dependent on, is he even going to keep playing? He's 41 years old, coming off of an okay year. Now, granted, he didn't win a lot, but he did throw for quite a few touchdowns. He threw 28 touchdowns as opposed to 11 picks. So he had a pretty good year, I thought, but he didn't win all that much. And so now the question is, does he even want to keep playing? But if so, he's available as a free agent, and I think for any team in the league, both from a marketing standpoint and from a team standpoint and from a success standpoint, at least got to think about, what could Aaron Rodgers bring to the table? The problem, of course, is the cost. The problem is that he's really old. And the problem is he's a little bit toxic in the locker room. So do I want Aaron Rodgers as the Seahawks quarterback? Probably not, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it is pretty big news. It's not every day that a future Hall of Fame quarterback comes available in free agency, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be available. So yeah, that's definitely big, I think. But looking at the rumors, the Seahawks opened as number 5 in the Aaron Rodgers odds. So this is notable. Now, since the odds opened a couple days ago, actually, the Seahawks have dropped. They are now 10th in the odds. So already Vegas is kind of correcting because I think Vegas understands that Geno Smith is probably better than Aaron Rodgers. And again, we're going to get into that just in a little bit in this video and talk about just why I think Geno is better. But it is interesting that there are at least some people who are betting on Aaron Rodgers to Seattle as an actual thing that could happen. I don't think it will happen. I don't really see a world where it happens, to be honest. But the fact that it's even being discussed is interesting to me because it means that somewhere out there, someone heard something that the Seahawks might be interested, right? And so Vegas, opened as number 5. Now they've fallen down to 10th, but they're still one of the 10 teams, according to Vegas. The Seahawks are one of the 10 teams most likely to sign Aaron Rodgers this offseason. And yes, that is notable. That is definitely notable. He is a future Hall of Famer. He's a 4-time MVP. I will say, normally for players, they get better after an Achilles in year 2 of their return. And last year was year 1 for him. So this next year would be year 2. Now, for someone who's 41 years old going on 42, I'm not sure if it makes sense to come back and play another year. I really just don't see that happening. But he could, and if he wants to, the Seahawks are one of those teams. Now, the team that leads the betting odds is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, of course, they currently are having to decide, do they want to bring back Russ, do they want to bring back Justin Fields? So they're an option. The Titans are one of the highest teams. The 49ers actually are in the top 5 right now in the betting odds, which is interesting because they wanted to sign Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago. At least they were interested in him. And Kyle Shanahan was interested in him, but he ended up choosing the Jets. But the 49ers were in on him. At least it was reported that they were in on him when he was initially available away from Green Bay. So that's interesting. Other teams that might be interested include the Raiders, the Browns. So lots of teams. The Vikings, could he pull a Brett Favre and go to the Vikings? That would be wild. That would be really, really wild. I don't think he wants to be a backup, though, so I think he's only going to play if he can be a starter. And, last year he was okay. He had like a 90 passer rating, so he was decent, 28 touchdowns. but he just didn't win very much. He only won 5 games. He went 5-12. Kudos to him for starting every single game of the Jets season despite being out of it. Clearly, he's a fighter. He is a warrior. He does not back down. It's pretty rare that Aaron Rodgers is playing meaningless football, and this season we saw him play about half a season of, the first half, you could say it was meaningful. They started 2-1. They were 3-4 at one point. But the second half of the year, that was 8 games of just total meaningless football. And normally with Green Bay, he was always either in the playoffs or hurt. The only years they missed the playoffs in Green Bay was when he was hurt. And even that last year in Green Bay, they were in it to the very last week, and they ultimately got eliminated by the Seahawks. But they went on that crazy 5-game winning streak. So, yeah, it's pretty rare that we see that guy play meaningless football. We saw him play 8 games worth of it this year. And although they weren't winning all that much, he was putting up decent numbers. The offense actually looked okay. But we're going to talk about just, do I think it's a good fit? Do I think it would be a good fit? And who's the better fit, Aaron Rodgers or Geno Smith? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. If you're a Seahawks fan, I think the answer is pretty obvious. Geno Smith, he's the better fit for this team. For this organization, this culture, this team, Geno is the better fit. Why is he the better fit? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why. We can look at the stats, and why don't we look at the comparison, just to compare. You see Geno, fewer touchdowns, but Geno threw for more yards. The completion percentage is where I really see a big difference. Geno is at 70.4, that he's very efficient. Aaron Rodgers had the worst completion percentage of his career last year, 63%. And so I think because of that, and you look at Geno had a better passer rating as well. Again, I'm not going to say 90.5 is terrible. 90.5 is pretty good, but Geno is better at 93.2. So I think Geno is the better fit statistically wise. And you say, well, Aaron Rodgers put up more points. He scored more touchdowns. That's true, but Geno won double the games. Geno won 10 games and Aaron Rodgers won 5. And the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter how you win. It matters that you win. And Geno has won a lot more than Aaron Rodgers has. You look at since Geno became the Seahawks starter, he has won 27 games. In that same time period, Aaron Rodgers has won 14. So Geno has almost double the amount of wins over the past 3 years as Aaron Rodgers. And you're like, well, Levi, you're being unfair because Aaron missed a year. He was hurt. Well, that contributes to it, right? Because the injury, I don't want to blame him for the injury. It's not his fault that he got hurt. Blame that on the Jets O-line. But it is part of the picture. And it's always a risk to bring in someone who has a history of getting hurt. That's always a risk. And so, yes, I am at the point right now where I would absolutely take Geno Smith over Aaron Rodgers. Now, do I think Rodgers could be a good fit? Maybe. In a world where Geno Smith doesn't want to play for the Seahawks, he could be a good fit, Because, we have good receivers. I think he would like to play with DK Metcalf. I think he'd enjoy playing with Jackson Smith and Jigba. But the problem with Rodgers, really, is that he is kind of a toxicity in the locker room. He's always talking about conspiracy theories. He's always rambling about kind of just nonsense. It feels like he's all about him. And that's really what it's felt like with him for the past couple of seasons, whether it's the Jets need to trade for Devontae Adams, or whether it's, the Jets need to bring in Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, it's just all his friends, right? Nathaniel Hackett is going to be their offensive coordinator, even though he was terrible at it in Denver. And so it just felt like Aaron was the one calling the shots, and it was all about him and his people and his friends, and it didn't work. So I would say this. The one scenario where I would be okay with the Seahawks bringing in Aaron Rodgers is if Geno gets hurt, right? If Geno, let's say it's the preseason week 3 or early in the season, like within August, September, Geno goes down with an injury. Then I could see the Seahawks bringing in Aaron Rodgers. But that would mean he'd have to be a free agent. And that might not be the worst idea for Aaron Rodgers. What he could do is he could just wait it out, not sign with the team, and then during the season, when a team, there's bound to be a team whose starter goes down, whether it's last year it was the Cowboys, a couple years ago it was Joe Burrow and the Bengals, a couple years, it's been all sorts of teams. Lamar's been hurt. Dak, it's happened to twice. Carson Wentz at the end of that Philadelphia season. Russell Wilson didn't miss the whole season, but he missed time in Seattle. So it's bound to happen, right? Guys get hurt. Stafford's been hurt. Jared Goff's been hurt. Actually, I don't think Jared Goff has been hurt, so I take that one back. But injuries are a part of football. Remember Kirk Cousins and the Vikings? They were hot, and then Kirk Cousins was out for the year. So what Aaron Rodgers could do is he could just sign with a team whose quarterback gets hurt mid-season. That might be his best call. And if that happened to Geno, if Geno went down and I was like, man, I really think the Seahawks are contenders, but not with Sam Howell, then I would be totally supportive of calling up Aaron Rodgers and asking him if he wants to come play in Seattle. But that is the one thing that I would be okay with. I do not want the Seahawks to sign him this offseason. So to answer the question down below, who is the better fit? It's Geno. All the way, every day, Geno Smith is the better fit. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you think Aaron Rodgers would be a better fit? Do you think he could bounce back in Seattle? Or would you rather stay away from a guy who is in his 40s and coming off of a 5-12 season? That's all for today, but as always, we'll see you tomorrow, and until next time, go Seahawks.